Welcome into the New Orleans Saints Postgame Show presented by Verizon. I'm Caroline Gonzalez, joined by John DeShazier here in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. A wild finish for the New Orleans Saints as they defeat the Carolina Panthers 34-31 to advance to 9-2 on the season. We will hear from head coach Sean Payton and Drew Brees. We will get you over to the podium as soon as we can. Those press conferences will be live. JD, a wild finish to end the game. The Saints led the entire game until the final 9 minutes.
Mike test testing 1 2. Mike test testing 1 2.
To 31.
Mike test testing 1 2.
Explain the last few minutes of the game to me, if you can. It all started with that Drew Brees interception.
Well, I can't because I can't hear
Mike
anything you're saying, so I have no idea what your lead-in was. But yeah, it got crazy at the end. You get a missed field goal, you get a made field goal by Will Lutz. You get Drew Brees doing what Drew Brees does in these situations with clutch passes and moves his team down the field. You never get a sense that the Saints are out of it if he's on this team and he's on the field. But certainly they had a little bit of good fortune. A missed field goal, a couple of missed PATs.
Mike test testing
put them
1
in a position
2.
where they could win this game.
Mike test
at the
testing
buzzer,
1
and that's
2.
exactly what they did. Showed a lot of poise down the stretch.
Yep.
As it got a little bit hairy down the stretch, a little bit wild back and forth. We saw a challenged defensive pass interference actually overturned, and then
Mike test testing 1 2.
Overturned.
Mike test testing 1 2.
Something we
Mike
had
test
not
testing
seen
1 2.
in person. And so a lot of things that really kind of put the Saints behind the 8 ball, and yet they never panicked.
Mike
they
test
hung
testing
in there.
1 2. How are we doing, guys?
4th and 1 at their own 43 that they didn't convert. So a lot of things went against them down the stretch, and they were able to pull it out. That just shows you another way that this team has figured out how to win.
You want to talk about behind the 8 ball. Teron Armstead left the game in the first quarter with an ankle injury. He did walk off the field under his own power, but then he was carted off. He was questionable at first and then ruled as out, and the Saints were impacted by that. They finished the game with 12 penalties, JD, for 123 yards. A lot of those coming at the end of the game with the offensive line holding penalties.
Yeah, but none of them were won against his replacement, Patrick Omame.
Right.
None were against him. And we had, unfortunately, several hands to the face penalties on the Saints. We had the defensive pass interference that was overturned and put into effect down the stretch. So they had some defensive penalties, a long pass at the back of the end zone where they get a defensive pass interference. So a lot of those yardage and some of those penalties against the defense. I thought offensive line-wise, when you consider now Andrews Pete out and Teron Armstead leads this game, I thought they were really phenomenal in terms of the way they held up against the #1 defense in terms of sacks in the league. They also did a pretty good job of holding up in pass protection and allowing Drew Brees to find some passes down the field. They got into a situation where it's 1st and 25, and they're able to convert that into a first down, beginning with a 21-yard pass on first down. That takes protection, and I thought the line held up pretty well.
Just 2 sacks for the Panthers in today's game, and just to take you through the final minutes of the game, again, I said it was tied up 31-31 with 9 minutes left in the game. Before that, Drew Brees did throw a pick, and then it was a touchdown for the Carolina Panthers. There was a pass interference call on Marcus Williams, which then caused them to basically just walk into the end zone. They were in the red zone. Marcus Davenport came up with a huge sack to get a stop within 2 minutes, and then they missed a field goal. Joey Sly, I believe is his name, the kicker for the Panthers, missed 3 field goals, 2 point-after touchdowns, and then that field goal at the end of the game. And then the Saints go marching down. You had a huge reception from Michael Thomas, a huge run from Alvin Kamara, who was pretty limited for the entire game, and then they get it in with a big field goal by Will Lutz.
Well, they got in a little bit of jeopardy, and they went to the playmakers down the stretch. Michael Thomas with a big catch, Alvin Kamara with a nice catch off a screen, and he also had a good run down the stretch. So they went to the guys that they're accustomed to having be playmakers on this team, and those guys came up with the goods when they needed them down the stretch. And, of course, again, I can't say enough. You've got a Hall of Fame quarterback who's been in these situations hundreds of times, and it seems like he's delivered certainly more often than not, I believe, and he gets this team down the field, gets them in field goal position to where basically it's a chip shot field goal, and then Will Lutz, who missed 3 out of 6 kicks at one point in time, but now he's back on a nice roll, and that's a chip shot field goal for him to win the game.
We talked about the offense leading into in the pregame show, JD. You talked about Jared Cook finding a little bit of traction in this offense, Michael Thomas, those guys that you rely on. But you had Jared Cook, you had Michael Thomas, you had Alvin Kamara, you had Latavius Murray. Latavius Murray led the Saints in rushing with 7 carries for 64 yards. You had Michael Thomas 10 receptions for 101 yards, and Jared Cook with 6 receptions for 99 yards. I mean, absolutely phenomenal play from the Saints offense. A big offensive game for both teams.
I think we're seeing exactly what the Saints expected and hoped for with Jared Cook on the field opposite Michael Thomas. You put Michael Thomas on one side, you put Jared Cook on the other. You'll get a lot of one-on-one coverage for Jared Cook on that other side, and I think he's taking advantage of it. We've seen a couple of times these last couple of weeks where Drew Brees has basically thrown it where only the 6'5" Jared Cook could get it, and Jared Cook has delivered for him. He was an asset last season. That's what made him a Pro Bowler, and he's certainly coming on to be an asset for the Saints. Here, he's giving them a viable second/third receiver if it's not going to be Alvin Kamara, and even then, Alvin Kamara comes up big in the passing game. So this is a team that it doesn't have like a traditional number 2 receiver where you have a guy as your receiver and you think he's going to catch 70 catches besides Michael Thomas. But you get those catches out of Alvin Kamara, and now they're getting that production out of Jared Cook, which is one of the reasons they signed him. So this offense really is kind of humming along.
JD, I'm going to interrupt you
in a
to
hard-fought
go to
game,
Sean Payton.
A lot of in there, and then made enough plays in the end of the 2-minute drill. That was obviously significant. Getting the stop defensively to force a field goal was big. So, look, there's a ton that we've got to be able to clean up from this game, and the challenge is doing it on a short week, getting ready to play Thursday. So, any questions? Yeah, look, it wasn't our best game, and by far it wasn't their best game, and quite honestly, it wasn't New York's best game, and so it is what it is. I think, look, I'm not going to get into it on the replay relative to the fouls, the change that took place in the offseason, but sitting in on every one of those meetings, I don't know that it's exactly what we discussed, where we are today with it. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not, but we've got to be able to adjust to it. No, just what I said. It obviously is, it's just the interpretation, that's all. Oh, look, yeah, before the game even begins, you already know how that's trending. You understand? And I mean, you take, Jared's big play in the seam, but anyway, it is what it is. And look, we've got to get better in a lot of areas, and we've got to focus on the things we can control. Yeah, there's some details. Look, you're at home, some of the pre-snap penalties, too many hands to the face defensively, too many penalties in the back end, which are second chances. I mean, there's a handful of times, even the sack we have 3rd and long, and then we've got the late personal foul on Cam. I mean, we're going to need to be smarter in bigger games. Look, it's just a matter of how you interpret it. I mean, I got the replay. I felt pretty good on both of those. So I'm quite sure if we sat and looked at that, in our meetings, most would agree. But it is what it is. We've got to be better. Fortunately, we were able to get a win, and we get ready on a short week now. Well, we're going to get working on it tomorrow. Well, look, I think early in the season, I think at the end of the half or the end of game, I mean, they're going to end that way usually. And the question is, do they end defensively or offensively for the most part? So that's something that, look, Drew's been doing this a long time, and he's awfully good at it. Yeah, he's been real impressive in clutch situations, and that's what you're looking for. So much is not only just the leg talent, but it's the it's the talent between your ears, and that's something that I think it's a strength of his. Pardon? No, listen, I think, no, we played that. I mean, you want to finish the game there, you're a 20-some-yard field goal. So, yeah, I mean, we got to, once we had Alvin's run, all of a sudden you got into, your percentages dramatically jumped. Yeah, look, we filled in, and they had a few players get nicked up too, though. So it's part of the game. It was a physical game. I thought both teams played hard. It wasn't always the cleanest game. There's a lot of respect between the two clubs, and we've been in some tough battles with those guys. Say it again. Well, we're now going to hand it off. We're going to take it down to 3 or 4 seconds. We don't have a timeout, so we're in a clock it mode. There's enough time on the clock where we can run a play and do that. So that's what's being communicated to Drew. Yeah. Look, everything concerns me. I mean, the fouls concern me, Ed. The change of possession snaps, the 4th down in a yard, there's a lot of those things. Absolutely. We're concerned. We got to get it corrected and cleaned up, and that's why we're coaching. Pardon? Yeah, I mean, we didn't commit it. I mean, look, there's going to be certain things that we want to try to do. He made a number of big plays for us. So whether they come in the running game or the passing game, Latavius the same way, the big touchdown early. Some of it's a byproduct of what we're doing, and some of it, there's, intentions behind it. For who? Yeah. He got some good matchups. Man, the throw Drew makes on one of his touchdowns, was a big play. He played exceptionally well. He's moving around well. He's been doing that in practice, and I'm proud of him. He made a heck of a catch above his head. It just seemed like if you threw it his way, he was coming down with it. And against a team that plays a lot of the zone, trap zone, your tight end's going to have some of those opportunities. Yeah, absolutely. Someone that, yeah. Well, look, we've seen it more than just today. We saw it even when Alvin was hurt. He's been I knew this. I knew coming in he was a real good teammate, and I knew that the film that we had seen was really really productive. But you don't realize how big he is until you see him in person, and he's been a real good addition to this team, filling in for a real good player that left. He's a real good football player, and the more space or more air you give him, the more challenging it is. So you got to find a way to, take some of the air out of those tackles, take some of the air out of the coverage. There are a few plays where we could have defended it better, and I'm sure we will the next time. Nothing. I mean, you can't control it. I mean, you just got to evaluate your own gut. Even the muff punt was tough with the angles. We finally got one angle where you could see it kind of hit the foot or the back of the calf. But I was concerned that, that there wasn't a clear visual angle until I saw that one. You got to trust your gut. That was our second challenge. So we were out of challenges, but that was significant because obviously it's a turnover. We score a touchdown. If you say a challenge is worth a touchdown, which I think it would be. But the earlier one, I just disagree with. I mean, I thought it was a real good route by Jared. I don't want to go through each one of these calls. I mean, I don't want to do that. So any other questions? Yeah. I've got no updates injury-wise. We'll keep you posted. We had a goal line play. I called a timeout. I was hoping to get a goal line front and coverage. We didn't get it. And then I made a poor call on the actual run, and we didn't have a chance really. Those guys made a good play defensively, and it was a terrible call. Again, I'm not, listen, any game questions, or are we just looking for hits? Any game questions, please? As Drew, it's a slant call. He gives him a little sluggo adjustment. Mike does a great job. Their corner, Bradbury, jumps it, and it's a good throw and catch on the sideline. The timing of it was outstanding. Yeah. I mean, what were there, 2? Yeah, I mean, they were inside of a yard, first one we got, and we had a penalty, right? So we had to punt it. And the next one was just a poor call. So we got to be better. I got to be better there. Any more questions? All right, thanks.
All right, of course, that was Saints head coach Sean Payton. We'll go over back to the press conference shortly with Drew Brees. When he comes to the podium, we'll get that over to you. JD, we talked about the end of the game. Now I just kind of want to go from start to finish. The Saints saw their first opening drive touchdown today, courtesy of Latavius Murray. And I asked you earlier in the game, why isn't Alvin Kamara performing as well as Latavius Murray is? And you simply said, what?
They were focusing on Alvin,
Right.
obviously, when you're his kind of talent, and they know you in the division. They're going to do whatever they can to corral Alvin Kamara. And they did so for a good portion of this game, although he had some moments, and his numbers will speak to that at the end of the game. But Latavius Murray goes out there, and then, he's kind of a fresh face, and they might not be expecting the Saints to use him in the way that they used him out there. He's already shown that he can be a phenomenal runner. We saw that in the Chicago game. We saw it in another previous game. So we've seen some good things out of Latavius Murray. But obviously Carolina says, we're going to pick our poison. He's going to be a guy that we're not maybe going to focus on as much as you would on Alvin Kamara. And Latavius Murray made him pay for it.
And Jared Cook, I think we saw step up in a big way. Credit to you for writing that article on his second half of the season, because he's been playing outstanding ever since then. I don't want to make your head any bigger than it already is, but he's been playing great. You saw 99 yards out of the tight end today, and as you said, he is just a huge target, and it's clear that him and Drew Brees are developing a little bit more chemistry, a little bit more trust, because Drew threw it up there, and Cook just went up there and got it. Yeah,
and he had one taken away from him on an offensive pass interference. Saints challenged that one, didn't get that call to go their way, and we thought, at least I thought, that Jared Cook was pretty clean on that one, but he would have had a 100-yard game. But, again, he's been working with Drew Brees. They worked together, all this offseason, so they had an opportunity to establish some chemistry. They get in training camp. Cook gets injured. He can't really go through training camp. He can't really go through the preseason games. Then the beginning of the season, Drew Brees gets injured, and they can't work together in games. Then Drew comes back, and Jared Cook's out with an injury, so they can't really get their cohesion together. But finally, now they're back on the field together, back in the huddle, and we're seeing some of the things that we saw earlier in training camp when they were on the field together.
I don't know if there's any more words to describe Michael Thomas other than his username, Can't Guard Mike, because it doesn't matter what teams do in order to contain him. Doesn't matter what the scouting report says. He finds his way to get open each and every game.
Well, the big thing about it is they talk about his work ethic, and the main thing with that for a receiver is to make every route look the same so the defender doesn't know exactly what it is you're doing. He's kind of mastered that right now, because no matter what it is the defense does to him, whether they want to play a man-to-man, if you want to play a man-to-man, that's probably a big mistake because he's so strong and physical, but he's able to make every route look the same, and he's able to get open. And look, you've got to credit the offensive line, because a lot of times that work has to be done to allow that route to develop. You got to credit, obviously, the work that he does with Drew Brees, because Drew knows where he's going. They have that chemistry going, much more than he and Jared Cook. So you've got a lot of guys to credit, but Michael Thomas still has to go up and catch the ball when it comes his way, and he does that better than anybody in the league right now. Had 10 more catches in this game. He goes over 100 catches for the third consecutive season. unless something drastic happens, he's probably going to set an NFL single-season receptions record because he's above that pace right now.
Now, we talked about it briefly earlier. Teron Armstead did leave the game in the first quarter with an ankle injury, but Patrick Omameh had to come in his place. How difficult is it for a guard to take the place of a left tackle? You're already without Andrus Peat because of a broken arm. Nick Keaston has taken his plate at guard. Now you're putting a guard at a tackle position.
Well, I think it's phenomenal to be able to do that. We've seen Andrus Peat be in a game and kick out from guard to left tackle. They're turning out the lights on us, but that's okay. We're still going to run our mouths. But we've seen Andrus Peat be able to do it in mid-game. But for Omameh, who hadn't played a whole lot, to come off the bench and step in at, you could argue, the most critical position on the offensive line, outside of center, obviously, but left tackle is the guy who's responsible for a lot of protection. You're responsible for protecting Drew Brees' back side, his blind side. And so, yeah, I'm sure they gave him some help, but to be able to come off the bench and do what he did in this game, I just think speaks to how well these guys are able to practice. Dan Rochar, the offensive line coach, you can't give him too much credit because he keeps these guys ready, whether it be Nick Easton last week or whether it be Omameh this week. He's done a phenomenal job of making sure that the Saints aren't shorthanded, even when they look a little shorthanded.
Don't worry, JD. It's winter, so I'm turning translucent here, so you can just go off of my glow. We talked about special teams at the beginning of the game. No Deontay Harris, so Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara were picking up that. But you saw J.T. Gray, and he seems to step up for this special teams unit time and time again. You saw the ball hit the back of a Carolina Panthers leg, and it wasn't clear at first, but then they had to go to the replay. J.T. Gray recovers it. There's a challenge on the play, and the Saints obviously win that one.
Yeah, JT scooped it, but I think, and I might be wrong, might have been Justin Hardy Sr. who pushed the Carolina player basically into the punt returner and caused that turnover. Both of those guys.
Two Panther players collided, right?
And I think Justin Hardy, was the guy who was pushing the Panthers player into his teammate and forced that. Those two guys play gunner on this team, and they've come up with some huge plays. We saw J.T. Gray block a punt in Chicago. Now we see him come up with a huge recovery of a muff punt. We saw Justin Hardy contribute on that play. And then we see the special teams play on the missed field goal. Maybe that missed field goal was because of Marcus Davenport applying some pressure. Now, of course, the kicker had already had some issues before then, but you're already shaky a little bit mentally, and you see this big guy, big condor, jump over the line, and he's next to you when you're trying to kick a field goal, and maybe that influenced him some. But I thought the Saints special teams obviously showed up well. You've got Will Lutz doing exactly what he does. Yeah. I thought Thomas Morstead did exactly what he usually does, and they weren't hurt in the return game without Devontae Harris. So I thought all around, pretty good game, but obviously J.T. Gray with a huge recovery because that leads to a short touchdown drive.
Now, this wasn't on special teams, but you and I noticed this near the end of the game. I don't remember what possession it was, but Malcolm Brown, defensive tackle.
We might want to leave that alone because that was the 4th down run that they didn't get.
Okay. So we won't address that.
But he was out there.
But he was out there.
Because that's probably a package that we might see some more. Malcolm Brown, the defensive tackle, goes out there, and I don't know what package they call that, the heavy or whatever, but he goes out there, and Will Clapp is out there as a tackle eligible, and they go with a big lineup on that 4th and short. And you heard Coach Payton say, look, I just made a bad call on that one.
Right.
But obviously they like that personnel package.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it is a short week for the Saints. They are going to be playing on Thursday. That's Thanksgiving of this week at 7:20 p.m. against the Atlanta Falcons. The Saints are 5-3 in the Sean Payton era in a short week. How do you prep? How do you recover your body for a short week? The Atlanta Falcons are coming off of a short week, too. They played today against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But how do you prep your body for a game in Atlanta on Thanksgiving night?
Well, you've got to get as much rest and recovery as possible. This will be a mental rep week. You can't go through a normal practice week because you've just played a bruising game. Teron Armstead lost in this game. Now, the Saints might be able to get somebody back from injury this week. Maybe they get Deontay Harris back. Maybe they get back cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, which will certainly help against Julio Jones at receiver. Marshawn practiced in the red jersey, limited on Friday, so that signals that he's a little bit back closer to getting back on the field. But obviously this is a bruising game where you're playing a division rival, and so it's rest and recovery now. It's getting off your feet as much as possible because, again, you know this team. This team knows you. It's mental reps, looking at a lot of film, seeing what it is they do now that they might not have done last year, or they might not have done when they were here a couple of weeks ago in the Superdome. So because you're not going to change drastically offensively or defensively in that short amount of time. But they're
not the first time the Saints have had to play without cornerback Marshawn Lattimore. He's dealt with ankle injuries in the past, but they've done it the past 2 weeks. What adjustments on stepping up? What adjustments have you seen out of?
Mainly, you can't play as much man-to-man because you don't have Marshawn Lattimore, although I thought PJ moments today too. Now, unfortunately, the Saints didn't get as much pressure on backs, so eventually they were able to get to him and chip away at him, but deep in the backfield and get a few against him. So, those are things that, kind of happen over the course. McCaffrey is an MVP candidate for a reason. Now, he probably won't get it because they're 5-6, and it's tough to do it from a losing team, but they have good players on that team too, and Kyle Allen is more than capable as a quarterback. But I think P.J. Williams and C.J. Gardner-Johnson and those guys, I think Patrick Robinson, probably could tighten up a little bit, and it didn't seem like he had his best day out here today. But again, you're playing against those kinds of weapons. So I thought they want to be better because some of those, defensive penalties, some of those pass interferences, that one at the back of the end zone, Marcus Williams thought he got there, thought he got a tip on that one, thought not the case. But there are some things that can be cleaned up.
Well, Sean Payton, you just heard it in the press conference, said that they needed to clean up a lot of stuff. He's been Superdome, and after you heard from Cam Jordan, you heard from nearly every player and Sean Payton say that there were a lot, but you hopefully look to correct those games going into this week.
There will be no lack of incentive in this game, obviously. Saints have an opportunity not just to win the game, maybe get, if not win a division, certainly get a little bit closer to winning the division. But you're talking about they lost to a 1-7 team at the time that came in here and had their way with the Saints. Get back out there. They wanted to get back out there as soon as possible. That showed last week because of the way they lost that game. They dominated the Saints pretty much on both sides of the ball, and the Saints obviously at that apple because you don't like
slice of the pie. It's Thanksgiving.
Slice of the pie, bite of the apple, piece of pumpkin pie. But the Saints want to get back after them because you don't want anyone to do that to you, much less a division team.
JD, I'm going to interrupt you. We're going to go to quarterback Drew Brees.
Yeah, just playing this time out and knowing that all we got to do is get in field goal range and we feel good about our chances. The whole game was really back and forth. Got to give them a ton of credit. They came in and really battled both sides of the ball, and it was back and forth. It was just a hard-fought football game. I'd say for us, as I think about just that fourth quarter, we basically gave them the ball, on the interception and then on the, for them. And obviously, when I look back at that as an offense, felt like there were some other opportunities throughout the course of the game. But listen, it's not always going to be perfect. And in fact, I'd say to gut out a win like this as a team is pretty significant. I think it just continues to strengthen the team and give you a ton of confidence and go out there. We're still searching for that best game. Yeah, so we fast start. We've been talking about that, needing to improve upon that. I think we made strides towards that today. Guys coming up with some big plays. It was a combination of some big plays, some nice runs, just good complementary football. I think good balance. And there was a sequence there at the end of the first half where, we stop them on defense, then we get the penalty, right? And I'm thinking there was maybe 7 minutes left in the half or something like that at that point, and they run that thing all the way down and score, right? Otherwise, they're punting to us, and maybe we're going on a drive and getting points and not letting them back on the field. So when you look at the entirety of the game, you have to look at all these little things where, man, that was tough for us because we allowed them to stay on the field. Not only that, they went down and got a touchdown, and they didn't allow us to get the ball back, right? And then they get the ball to start the second half. So as an offense, you feel like it was about an hour before we got a snap, between snaps. So a lot of the little things that take place during the course of the game that make each game unique.
Drew, why do you think that game to game there's such a huge discrepancy with these officials on how to define and call a penalty? Not just pass interference, just in general. Why is there such a discrepancy?
Well, penalties are judgment calls, right? And then I think we as a league, competition committee, everyone tries to build in, certain mechanisms to be able to make sure that we get it right. I think the thing that will be discussed probably for the rest of the season and onward is pass interference, right? What is, what isn't? It was kind of my impression, just based upon what I've seen from this year, is that they're not going to overturn anything unless it's what happened in the NFC Championship game, right? Where it's a total timing thing. It prevents the tragedy, right? The tragedy. Now, one got overturned today. That's one out of I don't know how many that have not been overturned, right? But that was interesting. Why that one versus some others? Again, at some point there's someone who's making a judgment call, a human decision, is being made, and so it's impossible for that to always be consistent.
Drew, sorry if you've already been asked this before. Sean said you changed to a sluggo route on the Thomas pass. Did you just a leverage thing? What did you see right there?
Yeah. Leverage, just feeling, based upon the situation and just the flow.
As far as what Mike Thompson says, that example of the play, like Brad Draggs following the ball game.
Yep.
You kind of get a sense when, all right, maybe Mike's broken down a guy where he's going to be able to kind of beat him on certain routes by toward the end of the game, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're referencing everything throughout the course of the game, right? That formation, that alignment, that release pattern. What did they see? How did they react to it? And then what can you kind of keep in your back pocket for later on, And so that's the game within the game.
That was the back pocket.
Absolutely.
Drew, how much do you look forward to those 2-minute drills to win a game like that?
Yeah.
Have it in your hand.
Yeah. Listen, it's it's exciting. It's butterflies. But it's also confidence. It's it's unity. You feel like, man, everybody knows, the challenge ahead. Everybody knows what we need to do in order to, accomplish whatever it is that we need to accomplish to go win the game. And man, everybody just kind of locks in and goes. It's where a lot of the things that have happened or transpired throughout the course of the game kind of give you, that information, that confidence, that, assurance as to, how you're going to handle that drive and, how you're going to accomplish the task.
How much are you getting from what happened during the game, and how much are you pulling from prep work during the week?
Yeah. I mean, every team kind of has their game plan, right, for you. And so you try to anticipate what that game plan is going to be. It's not always what you think. In fact, I'd say majority of the time with us, teams come out and, break the tendencies, right? Give you stuff you haven't seen before. But that's why you have to go back to just doing the stuff that, man, you're good at, you have time on task with, you can make quick decisions with, and it's just, it's almost like it's automatic. It's muscle memory. It's all that myelin that's built up around those nerve fibers that you have in your body. I'm getting kind of scientific on you, but.
Drew, what do you work on this week, Coach, short week, so it doesn't turn out like it did 2 weeks ago here in the state of Atlanta?
What's the question?
What are you guys going to be preparing for offensively at least?
Yeah. Well, as I recall, it wasn't too long ago, obviously. They got after us a little bit with the pass rush. We were not very balanced offensively. I think we didn't run the ball that many times. We didn't run it as effectively as I know we can. And so, I think anytime we take the field, regardless of who the opponent is, man, we want to be balanced. We want to be efficient. We want to stay on the field, convert third downs, make big plays when we have the opportunity, score points, win games.
To not have 2 starters on the offensive line
Mm-hmm.
in the way that team rushes the passer.
Yeah.
For those guys that give you the time you had on the last drive,
Yeah. Yeah, they really did a great job. Guys stepped up. Nick and Patrick, and listen, that's the way this is, right? Next man up, and always talked about that O-line as a unit and those guys working together, and the fact that you guys got two guys right next to each other, that haven't really gotten a whole lot of playing time until recently, and they've stepped up and done a nice job. Yeah. Listen, I got a ton of confidence in throwing to him. You saw the ball he climbed the ladder and went and got. I think everybody in the stadium was pretty impressed with that. The defenders didn't even jump. Like that's in the stratosphere, and he jumped up and got it. So, yeah, you see plays like that, and just overall, I think his confidence level and just again that rhythm that we're finding is a good thing. Yeah. I mean, listen, it is encouraging, but then the motivation and the urgency becomes we have to fix these things, right? Because these are the things that will get you beat, right? These penalties on both sides of the ball are the things that will get you beat. So yeah, there's a lot to clean up. Yeah. Listen, ton of confidence. Him and just that whole unit. That whole unit. Obviously, over the time that we've all been here together, and he's been our kicker. I feel like we've had plenty of those moments. And I think it's one of those things where, hey, Carolina has the ball at the end of the game, right? And they're driving, and it's a defense believes they're going to stop them, and they do. And then field goal block unit says, man, we're going to somehow affect this, and they miss it. And then offense, man, we're going to go down and give our kicker and our kicking unit a chance to win this game, and we do, and then they step up and make it, so it's team effort.
Drew, how much autonomy do you have in the confidence that I have for a game like that? They call the plays to make the checks.
Yeah.
Is it more so than other times?
Yeah, so we've got various packages where Sean allows me to call the offense, call the plays. Get to certain things, check to certain things that are favorable. 2 minute, that's what I do. And then, if we encounter certain situations, third downs or, I guess mainly third downs, he'll pipe in with a thought or what have you. But at the end of the day, he gives me the opportunity to call those.
Drew, what made the screen call to AK so advantageous in that situation? I know it's quick.
Yeah.
Was it something specific that covered or something?
No, I mean, listen, we were just playing fast. We were playing fast. Felt like we had them reeling a little bit. They're having trouble getting lined up, and we're able to hit them with some quick ones.
Playing on Thanksgiving night?
Yeah. Well, there's something about playing on Thanksgiving that I remember when I was a kid. I'd growing up in Texas, I'd always be watching the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, right? Watching football. I mean, football just goes with Thanksgiving, right? It's like you can't have one without the other. And so to ever think that someday I'd be playing on Thanksgiving, probably never thought that would happen. So yeah, I think these are unique moments. Obviously, the challenge for us is the quick turnaround. You get 4 days and you're back to playing a game, which is very challenging for guys. But Thanksgiving, turkey, and football, I guess.
You heard it there, Thanksgiving, turkey, and football. The New Orleans Saints defeat the Carolina Panthers today 34-31. Let's go ahead and show you some highlights from today's game.
Yard play from scrimmage. One of 3 teams in the league. Here's Murray. Murray into the secondary. Latavius Murray takes it home. I got a 3-game lead over the Panthers right now in the NFC South. Oh, that ball touched. Picked up by the Saints. Bell. Oh, what a miscue. 2nd and 10. A little play action. Wide open. Touchdown.
Back then. At the same time, he has Kamara and Thomas.
And he has a touchdown. Vanderlaw on the fullback. Brees goes to the end zone to Thomas for the touchdown. From 33 yards. And that kick is good. The Saints win it.
All right, your New Orleans Saints defeat the Carolina Panthers right here in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome 34-31 to advance to 9-2 on the season. They'll head to Atlanta for Thanksgiving on Thursday to take on the Atlanta Falcons at 7:20 p.m. on the road Thanksgiving night. We'll have all your coverage right here on NewOrleansSaints.com or the Saints app. Make sure you download it. For Caroline Gonzalez, John DeShazier, thanks for joining us for the New Orleans Saints postgame show presented by Verizon.